Got that recording going.
Yeah. So so welcome everyone. And so because this is going to be recorded and is being recorded, and some people won't have the context for Regenerate Cascadia, and it's just a good reminder. We're just going to kind of go through quickly some of the stuff that you may have heard before. Some of it's been changed up a little bit, but and then get into what we're developing right now. And it just, hopefully as we go through this, I think we're all kind of learning how to walk together, and this has just been good. So next slide, please, Brandon. So Regenerate Cascadia is being developed as a long-term vision and process that works with the on-the-ground communities to design and implement new frameworks of governance, ecology, and economy for the regeneration and health of our bioregion. As many are seeing, this is much more than a tour and summit. It is an opportunity to create a shared context for a Cascadia bioregional movement. And with that in mind, some new context setting regarding the current and emerging governance and organizational structure is in order. Regenerate Cascadia is truly a complex organism that was birthed during the activation tour in October. And there is some core structure that has helped to incubate a vision that is rekindling and inspiring a bioregional movement whose time has come. And it really does feel like that. Partly because it's good practice to remind ourselves of the context from which Regenerate Cascadia rose. And as I said, the recording for others that will be watching this later. So next slide, please. Brandon, yeah. So I'm just going to start out with introducing myself, and then maybe Brandon, you can carry on from there. So as many of you know, I'm a community artist and a weaver based in Victoria, BC, in the heart of the Salish Sea, which are also the unceded lands of the Lekwungen and Masonic speaking people, Coast Salish people. And Brandon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Brandon Letzinger, and I'm a co-administrator with Regenerate Cascadia along with Claire Atwell. And I am, just excited to be here. I help do a lot of the back end work with the website. And then also with just kind of building some of the core organizational documents. And I think tonight we also have Julie and Tanya here. So maybe they could take a moment and introduce themselves as well. And I'm located in Seattle on the unceded lands of the Duwamish and Coast Salish people along the Salish Sea.
Julie, yeah.
Cool. I'm Julie Wolf, and I live in Tahuya, which is in the lower part of the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. And I am part of the core admin team helping with the website, and also part of the Bioregional Education Guild. And just helping with the groups and the communications, and I'm very excited to be a part of such a dynamic organization. I'm also on the board, executive director of Northwest Permaculture Convergence for a few years. That's it for me.
Hi everyone. I kind of had my camera off because I was eating dinner, but I'm Tanya Wojtaszek, and I have been sort of in this environment since, I want to say, August, September-ish, when we organized some of the events in the tour. And it's been really fun to be part of this group. I really love what we do here, and so I'm part of the backend team as well, helping stewards as they go through their process and developing sort of onboarding processes and things that we will need as new people, more people come in, so they understand where to go for information, what's what, and all of that. So yeah, super excited to be here.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, so, and then really wanting to just acknowledge that we're a growing community of really active on the Regenerate Cascadia digital platforms, Telegram and the website, and in our landscapes. And that we're co-creating this with all of you, the local leaders who've joined to help organize every aspect of this movement that's growing and changing daily. And we also want to wholeheartedly recognize the gifts passed on to us by the elders of the bioregional movement, and further back, the first peoples of this land, whose knowledge of place is a precious gift to all, including future generations. So next slide, please. So in this session, we really would like to cover some of the historical context for Regenerate Cascadia, and the design challenge, the structural components of Regenerate Cascadia, which is what we've been working on quite a bit, setting priorities collectively, and maintain, setting the priorities, that are going to, and how we're going to increase capacity to sustain the momentum. So do you want to go to the next slide? So just a little bit of historical context. Regenerate Cascadia started as a collaboration between Brandon and myself during the Edge Prize, an initiative by Salmon Nation and the Terrain Collective. It was, it involved more than 140 edge walkers from around the Cascadia bioregion. And we met to explore place-based bioregional regeneration, tell our stories, and practice working cooperatively, and then to distribute funding to regenerative projects in Cascadia. Much of the on-the-ground work needed for bioregional regeneration, we recognized, was being done in our communities, but too often the work is siloed and not connected. During the Edge Prize, Brandon and I recognized that mapping and empowering the work already happening was what was missing. We saw a huge opportunity through catalysts such as the Activation Tour and the Regenerative Communities Network Summit to help weave a network that might spark a bioregional movement whose time has come. And Brandon, I think you should speak to this next slide, just to give context of the Cascadia bioregion.
Sure. So for people who are not familiar with this term Cascadia, Cascadia is a bioregion, which is the Pacific Northwest, as defined through our watersheds. So it's the watersheds of the Fraser, the Columbia, and the Snake Rivers, all coming together to greater represent the natural and place-based realities of this area that we call home. And this scale, well, quite large, is the largest connection where physical is the largest area where connections based on this physical place will really kind of make sense. And so even if we don't see people in the day-to-day, whether we're talking about food or salmon or wildfires, this is kind of a representation and a recognition that nature acts bioregionally. It acts through watersheds and ecoregions and bioregions. And so when we start talking about our solutions, these need to be place-based and they need to reflect that. So for example, you can kind of see that on the right hand is a picture of the Sailor Sea. And the Sailor Sea is divided by the US-Canadian border, which is an arbitrary line that doesn't reflect the place or the people living here. And because of that, it's no, thank you. And a border which was also kind of set down and defined through an event called the Pig War, which was between a British and American farmer on San Juan Island. And because of that dispute is really where caused kind of where they set that line and that boundary. So all to say that we can probably do a little bit better than that.
We go to the next slide. So we realized that we needed coherent storytelling at a bioregional scale. And so that was where the activation tour came in. And we traveled to 14 different communities throughout the Pacific Cascadia to learn, connect, and weave the regenerative work being done. We did this after having invited those willing to step up and help organize local gatherings such as presentations, workshops, community dialogues, or field trips. And one of the main organizing factors that came into that was that we needed to be invited into those communities. We didn't decide where we were going to go. It needed to be come from those communities. I'm going to go to the next slide, Brandon. So the activation tour culminated in an online open space Cascadia Bioregional Summit, which was a festival of what is working. We made space for every person and group to present about their work, as well as have space for thematic conversations. Later that week, we invited watershed teams to come together to meet, debrief after the tour, and to begin envisioning a shared regional vision. We finished on the following Saturday with a one-day unconference, which was a capstone event where we self-organized around specific themed dialogues put forward by those who felt called to do so. Go to the next slide. So learning from the process is a big part of how we develop trust and stay authentically connected to communities. Thus, we have been and will continue to gather our stories, lessons, and learnings. This is being done through the Regenerate Cascadia website, our YouTube video channel, the Cascadia Spoke publication, and a written proceedings document, which we hope to share in the next few months. We're also in the process of assisting in the formation of a media and communications guild that will help tell the local stories of regeneration so that what is so powerfully inspirational about what is happening here can be shared. We're supporting local hubs so that they have the organizational capacity to prioritize what is needed for regeneration at the landscape level. And this will need to include data collection services and evaluations around bioregionally significant markers, so that learning at different landscape scales can become an integral part of this bioregional learning process. And because ultimately it is the land that is the organizer of everything, we need to get much better at listening to each other and listening to those who might be able to share knowledge about story of place. We know that these are capacities that need building, and they often come in our ability to cooperate pro-socially and how we live in right relationship. This community cultural development is a really important part of this work. Yeah, Brandon, did you want to take the next few slides?
I could. So pretty much, I mean, all to say that more than just an organization is that we're creating an organizational culture, which has shared values, shared principles, a shared vision, and mission that we're all kind of working towards. And these are being created together. So we've just started working on starting to actually look at governance docs and what those principles and values might be. And so for that process, we're creating, shared Google documents in the Google Drive. We also have a developing governance and pro-social guild that is starting to look at these different issues, and anybody can contribute values that they think it's important for regenerative work as well as Regenerate Cascadia to kind of include. And so some of these things are that it's bioregional. It's not working with arbitrary lines on maps. It's generational, intergenerational, so that we're thinking more than just short term. It's pro-social, so that we have clear systems for how someone can walk in having never heard of it and get involved and move all the way up, and kind of removing that ego and other kind of really harmful traits there. It's based around whole systems thinking, and so not just looking at one issue, one layer, but rather how they weave together as part of a whole watershed, a whole landscape and then how that holistically connects with a broader network and into bioregions and continents and the planet itself. We work around the idea of subsidiarity, which is this nested concept that decision-making is taken by those who are most impacted locally, and then it works its way up as it needs to, but that it doesn't come down from a centralized top-down authority structure. We work within the 3 Horizons framework, which means that we are not only doing short-term and pragmatic solutions, but that we're also fitting this into the long term and building the structures and then finding where these places intersect to figure out how we're supporting the short term so that it's meeting that long-term vision. We also work within an Indigenous lens and through strong input and feedback of First Nations and Indigenous people living here, including knowledge and wisdom, and also approaches for how we approach situations. So things like, valuing and respecting one another, honoring each other's time, but also more than that, approaching with questions rather than answers. Along with that, a core part of this is also looking around and seeing that when we're ready, we will also find the voices that are missing, that need to be present, and part of this conversation for true regeneration at the scale of a landscape. We also talk about privacy by design, which means that people will always control their own data and that and through their consent, and that they will always be able to take that data back and also delete their data if they so choose. And lastly, everything that we're doing is work to be replicable and scalable. So we're building a digital tool and framework both within Cascadia, within watersheds, and then also across watersheds. And we hope that this can be, that we can be working with people in other bioregions as well to help provide those tools. A big part of this then is that we are building a website and digital framework. I think we've touched on some of these commitments, but really this is being co-created, and we are working, we made a choice to not just do another Mighty Networks, not just do another Facebook group, but rather we actually wanted to co-create our digital platform with the community of people that would be most impacted and actually using it. So we're working through this idea of hubs and guilds, and then really working to both create a back-end network that can help regenerative organizers throughout Cascadia connect together, but also be a front end that where that information is searchable, indexable on Google, and then lastly, where we have built-in tools for organizers to help share and centralize information within a specific landscape around specific topics, and to do basic nonprofit reporting, and kind of for the financial and legal frameworks that we need and that we're building.
Yeah, so so this was our design challenge, was how can we be mapping our work and using the incredible energy at these one-time activation tours and summits, and to keep the work going afterwards for the long-term regeneration of the bioregion. Yeah, so the current goal for Regenerate Cascadia is to develop a participatory framework of governance at a watershed, ecological, and bioregional scale, able to cooperatively steward a vision, to build an information commons to map and track work that informs bioregional learning, as well as define clear metrics for success, and to assist in the creation of a bioregional regeneration fund that can support this work as defined by the landscape leaders themselves. Okay. Yeah, so this is where we're going to move into the next section. But this was the slide that in the last update session that we shared with you to try and explain some of the organizational structure that makes the idea of Regenerate Cascadia such a powerful and compelling example of bioregional scale organizing. It helped a bit, but during that session, we realized that we needed to get a lot clearer about the details of the structure. This is not something that any small team can figure out on their own. What we're about to share with you has absolutely required a co-creative process involving many of you, the landscape leaders of Cascadia. So yeah, I think this is a good place to maybe stop the slides and to actually move into the organizational structure document and the diagrams that Brandon has. Like, we started off with some input, and then Brandon, like in the middle of the night, starts putting a lot of stuff down, and then it's just kind of exploded since then. So but it's really helped to be going through some of the processes with some of the hubs and guilds that are going through the actual formation process, to start really seeing some of the detail we were kind of needing to be able to even start putting the structure together. So yeah, I'm actually wondering, Brandon, if you would like to pull that up and then share the diagram and walk us through some of the wire maps and the diagram that you, maybe starting out with the one that the last diagram that you came up with. And then we wanted to spend most of the time actually in conversation with you, with what
Yeah,
and
give me just one moment to pull it.
yeah. And I just, I know that many of you have seen some of this before, but there are a few new people here, and just wondering if there's any questions in the meantime while Brandon is bringing that up to come up.
Maybe wait, let's wait for questions in just a minute. Let me go just through the basics, and then I actually think having a more specific discussion and actually inviting people's input would be nice. Sorry, it's just taking a minute. Claire, so you don't happen to have, you didn't happen to have this already in a folder?
Oh, do you want me to put that in the, yeah, I'll just send the link to you. I'll send the link to everyone. Hang on. Oh, it's
So
this.
that's a link to the document. That's not the image though. And I think it's better probably to.
Okay.
Just a moment. All right, can people see this okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so yeah, this is kind of a basic diagram of what we're building through Regenerate Cascadia. I think something that's really important to touch on that maybe we haven't also touched on is the main focus of Regenerate Cascadia is to get people supported in their landscapes. People are out there doing the work and they don't have the tools they need. They're feeling isolated. A lot of the work is very individual, and people have limited time, means, and resources. And so our goal is that through working it with landscape hubs, that we can weave these different regenerative projects and communities together, so that we can really see regeneration start to happen on the scale of landscapes, on the scale of entire watersheds, ecoregions, and bioregions. And that this is the start of an actual multi-generational process. And a big part of that is actually seeing people funded. When we did this activation tour, it became really apparent that sometimes people aren't aware of similar work happening in neighboring watersheds on different islands in different areas. And people are out there doing the work. And so we really wanted to kind of find ways that could bring people together and then kind of facilitate a flow of funding from these like global funders down all the way down through these nested bioregional, ecoregion, watersheds levels, and then actually have a way that communities could identify the projects that needed help and then actually see people supported. And then also like to help increase that visibility so that we started to share and create feedback loops that were happening across watersheds. So the learning is happening within landscapes, but then we're also sharing it across landscapes. So within that, we've been doing a lot of thinking for how this impacts Regenerate Cascadia and what we're trying to build here. Firstly, we always start with the landscape and the regenerative work that's happening in the landscape. I think what's most important is that this is where we really want to center it. Something that we noticed is that a lot of times, especially with like virtual and global discussions, they can become abstract really quickly and they become disconnected from the actual needs of the people on the ground. And then also the people on the ground are not the ones setting their priorities or dictating the actual help that they need. So our first thing that we're building is a digital platform. And that is regeneratecascadia.org. And we kind of touched on that earlier. But it is a public-facing website where people can share events, updates, and news, reach different audiences, and then have an entry point where people who maybe are not that familiar can get involved. More than that, then on the back end can be this digital space where people become participants, they become members, and then anybody can form online groups. The two type of online group that you can create through the website is either a place-based community or a bioregion-wide topic. A topic would be something like bioregional mapping, Cascadia Seed Guild, bioregional education, bioregional media. A community would be a place like Whidbey or, you know, maybe Seattle, maybe it's North Seattle. But very specifically, a community is for a discrete landscape. Whereas a topic, again, extends across, and it's for really sharing knowledge that it might be important for regenerative communities. The next step up is that we actually have a 501c3 nonprofit backend built into this. So every different hub or guild or project actually receives 501c3 fiscal sponsorship. It receives the support of being a nonprofit program, which means that we have transparent and accountable ways of tracking money, which is really important. And that is really why that step is there. And then what's cool is that every different hub, guild, and project actually does their own budgeting, builds their own budgets, talks about what's important to them. And so our two types of groups, so basically when they're ready to, a online group emerges, a group of people who are interested or passionate can become stewards of that group. And those stewards can also form a backbone team. And when they form a backbone team, they can form either a hub, a guild, or a project. And by doing that, they receive the benefits of being part of this Regenerate Cascadia umbrella. So for example, there's a Whidbey Island hub. There's a Regenerate Whatcom hub forming. And by doing that, what they're doing is they're coming together to start to build a landscape budget. They're starting to create a portfolio of different regenerative projects within that landscape that might need support and funding and who need to be at the table. They can start to identify which voices and projects are missing. And then they start to explore this idea of a bioregional learning center, a learning center for their landscape. So what are the bioregional frameworks we need to be looking at? What are the inputs and the outputs? How do we define success? And then how do we link that into a long-term vision? And so those are things that kind of the different landscape stewards and teams start to look at. Moving up to the ecoregion, so within the Salish Sea, for example, there might be already like 7 or 8 different communities and hubs forming, and so those come together then at the scale of ecoregions. So the first 2 that we're really looking at is an ecoregion in the Salish Sea, and then also an ecoregion in the Willamette Valley, and kind of linking that together. So that would be like Eugene, Portland, and kind of along the Columbia River there. And then the Salish Sea is places like Victoria, Whatcom, Port Townsend, Whidbey, Vashon, San Juans, and these different areas where leadership teams have emerged. And then lastly, we have the scale of the bioregion itself. And these backbone teams and stewards can also form regenerate guilds. And that is things like bioregional education, bioregional media. And the goal of these groups is to create resources and tools that people might need, participants might need, regenerative communities might need. So we have a pro-social guild forming. And one of the big things that they're doing is actually like coming together with pro-social world to start to develop a training for better ways that we can develop governance, which is transparent and accountable, and it leads to healthy cultures, healthy organizing, that really values relationships, trust, and kind of people getting involved with that. Our ultimate goal is to have all of this come together as part of a bioregional congress or assembly that's actually made up of the different hubs, of the different guilds, and what we're calling these stewardship councils. This Congress holds the traditional 501c3 functions of the actual entire program. They can kind of help set the budgeting, the long-term vision and strategic goals. And then these stewardship councils form a little bit of more of that traditional role of the committees. So that'd be communications, fundraising. And the real big difference here is that a guild helps serve the hubs. Like everything is in service of the hubs. Whereas these stewardship councils are made up of people and they help support the backbone. And then meanwhile, everything in red, the Congress, the backbone teams, is coming in service to the landscape leaders themselves. So we're here to provide support, and we want to provide a space where people can network and then centralize things that are important to them and actually find support. And then lastly, we also are exploring kind of this idea of fiscally sponsored projects. So these are things that might be outside of the realm of a guild or a hub, but might also be connected to them, but also that can receive these different benefits. So I'm just going to actually leave it at that. And yeah, maybe I'll turn it back over to Claire.
Yeah, so, well, mostly I think at this stage, we've, the thing that feels really important about is was just being able to explain some of that structure. And then that's kind of fleshed out a little more in the document that we're working on, which is the organizational structure, instead of actually describing what all of those roles are. But yeah, it just, and then there's taxonomy. It's just, do the names sound, do they work for what we're calling a hub, guild? The the bioregional taxonomy is really important because they're different groups that are not associated with Regenerate Cascadia, but they're using all kinds of other taxonomy. And so we wanted to be coherent with what we were using together, but we were also wanting to make sure that when we're talking to other groups, Brandon's actually I wasn't able to go to the meeting, but there was, I can't remember the name of the group, but doing, I think it's One Earth. Yeah, Brandon can confirm that or not. But anyway, where they're using a whole bunch, a mishmash of other names. And so if we're going to be able to speak bioregion to bioregion, it's also important to sort of be clear about our own taxonomy and then be talking to other groups so that we are starting to create some coherence in the field. But yeah, I think at this stage, I'm going to suggest that we just open it up for questions, because a lot of information coming at you. So.
I also see Joey and Anita. I'm not sure if we've met before or if we have. Great to see you again. But maybe would you either of you like to take a moment and just say hi, or what brings you here tonight?
Yeah, thanks for calling us in. We were at a meeting earlier today. We just found out about all this. I've heard of Regenerate Cascadia for maybe a couple weeks, and I looked it up last night. And yeah, through some synchronicities and full moon stuff, I'm sure we ended up at the meeting this morning, and we wanted to come and just kind of. I think we kind of got ahead of ourselves, and like we're on the inside of things, which was amazing. And this is all just really incredible. I'm still trying to take it in through osmosis and sort of like let it hit my skin and like get absorbed, because there's a lot. You guys have done a lot of work, I'm amazingly impressed. And also, there's some confusion, but I don't even know what the questions would be yet. I'm at that stage. Thanks.
Wonderful. And Anita, how about you?
Pretty much ditto to what Joey said. Yeah, really just like excited about all the work that's gone into this so far. It's so beautiful. Yeah, we jumped in this morning to the Bioregional Learning Guild meeting, which was incredible to witness. Yeah, I'm holding a lot of curiosity about both like what can emerge from this, and then also like what drew us here at this particular moment. It's pretty interesting. So anyway, thanks. Good to meet you. Good to meet you all.
Very nice to meet both of you. And so something I would be actually really excited about is we have an excellent mix of people here. And what you're kind of witnessing is a shift where we did these. So before the activation tour, we did these like information sessions that kind of helped set the context and language for people who wanted to get involved. And since the activation tour, it's basically been 2 months. And we've done a tremendous amount of groundwork, kind of starting to build the infrastructure, building the idea of like, what is a hub? What's a group? What's a guild? And we're still like right there, like figuring it out. And so what I would love is that actually we have an excellent mix of people who have been either are like, it's your first night, hearing all this, to people who are somewhat familiar, to people who are, we have Mike with the Cascadia Seed Guild, and Jan. And then we also have people like Julie and Tanya, who are like part of the core team, as well as people like Cameron and Michael, who are tangentially related, doing like the bioregional mapping and stuff. So this would actually be great. Like I would actually love to, and Cameron and Michael, I'd love for you to chime in as well. But what made sense, what didn't? Because I think we're actually at a great pivot point where we're kind of like recycling our old presentation, but this is a really important like time now to pivot to what we're actually building. So what's confusing? Like what didn't come through where you're like, wait, what? Or what's the point? Or what's the purpose? And I'd love to just get some feedback on that.
Well, I can give a little of me. I'm sorry about me being blank. This is Mike with the Cascadia Seed Guild. I was fortunate enough to be at least there from the beginning of the tour. I mean, we just bear in mind some things. I'm not exactly sure of this number, but I think the population, the human population of the Cascadia bioregion is about 22 million people. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of geography, a lot of distance. I'm biased. I was just thinking about this a minute ago. I'm a seed nut, and I'm also a nut seed. So it's an amazing, for me, it's been an amazing experience. And I'll share something I shared the other day. In terms of how everything's come together, it's a bit like being on board a Boeing 747, which was a 4-engine passenger plane, and repairing one of the engines whilst it's in flight. And I've seen that emerge, and I think what's emerged so far is pretty remarkable, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Mike. And maybe like an apt, analogy could be like an Alaska airline flight with like repairing a door panel, or maybe that's too soon. Yeah, okay.
Right.
So go ahead, Claire.
Well, I was going to say, you know, really at the heart of this is how do we build something that feels trustworthy and robust enough to carry the things that we're trying to do, which is really support the people doing the work on the ground, to do the work that they're doing, because they're doing amazing work. They're not necessarily wanting to be part of, you know, creating the organizational structure. They need to be supported doing that. But trust and the communities that support them are places that have been neglected, and so it's building the capacity to cooperate with each other, to make decisions together, and to create a sense of, you know, part of what allows that to happen is creating a container that feels safe, and 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 that allows for a sense of belonging, a sense of identity that's a healthy identity. Like, it needs to be a permeable boundary, but still feel like there's something there. And so, but in developing all of this, by creating a sense that this is actually the entire structure that we're trying to, basically, it really needs to be co-created. It has to be, because there's this collective intelligence that's there. The kind of feedback we've been getting from groups that are just really doing amazing, outstanding work in areas of bioregional governance, and some of them finance, some of them media. Just education. We've been approached by them to come and actually, we just need the capacity to meet more and figure out how we can work together better. But there is a ton of capacity that is sort of waiting to come and be part of the conversation. So, but there's also there's that validation, and at the same time, we're also the funding part by creating a trustworthy system that can actually start to move the dial on regeneration. That actually then, for putting together a large landscape fund, that actually sort of creates the vehicle for that to happen. And yeah, we've been involved in some really very exciting discussions around that. So some of them are actually starting to kind of move along. Some of the people that we're talking to, it's like, because it's not, we actually can't speak publicly about who it is and what those like the details of those conversations, but we did want to convey that there is quite a bit of excitement, and a sense that other people looking at what's forming here is looking like a viable vehicle for getting those funds to the people where they need to be go to. And also the fact that we talk about having relationships with people, not so much with organizations. It's not that we don't work with organizations, but people are the people in organizations, and it's the relationships of trust that are built to those organizations. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Brandon, and then go to Jan.
Yeah, well, no, I think that's all wonderful. But I think this is also a great opportunity to actually get a temperature check on how much of that is actually getting conveyed in the presentation, because I don't actually think we touched on any of that, right? Like, we didn't really talk about a bioregional regeneration fund. We didn't talk about all these things. I want to jump, and so I might kind of actually like to go around a little bit, but we can do that in a second. Jan, I'd love to hear from you.
Great, thanks, and thank you for the presentation. I missed the one that you did in December or whenever it was, so it's good to hear what you're doing with this. One thing in the story that I think it would be helpful to put in is to name something that most people know who have been working in this field, whether it's whatever aspect of community well-being, ecological well-being that they're working on, is that groups are almost forced, because of the structure of funding, to be competing with each other, and are in siloed groups doing a little piece of something, whereas what we're looking at is saying that a bioregion needs to be looked at as a whole, And so finding ways that the work is being done with understanding the whole cultural, ecological, social, historical aspect as being the complete health, and that um and helping people move out of that pattern of competing. I'll get a little bit of funding over here, but if I get this funding, that means this group over here doesn't get it. And that reduces the capacity and the impact so much, and it creates these relationships that in some ways, you're meeting someone in the store and you're thinking, great, that's a good person, I really like them, but I'm going to compete against them for the funding. And I think that is being one of the pieces of the story would be helpful. I think that and maybe some background of the reason why you've got so many circles and it looks really complicated, and how come it has to be so hard. So something that gives a bit of a framing as to why so much of that level of work has been done. And I think it's my sense is it's because of the largeness of the vision and the work that's needed to be done in the many layers, and that government bureaucracies always have those to be able to do the level of work you want to do, but it's like being able to do it, still having those levels because they're needed, but doing it in this much more relational way by which there's this whole systems approach, like you're referring to, versus a siloed approach. So, I mean, those are some pieces that I think would be good to pull apart and say a bit more about when in presenting, that I would like to hear as well. And I think one thing is being involved as a participant that I have as a question is the feeling of the amount of the rush of this, like how come it has to be so going so fast. And I think there's both the excitement about that, I certainly understand that, and the need for it, the urgency, but it feels there's this, I'm just hoping that everybody's taking care of themselves well in the push to do it. And I know it's a bit of a catch-22, because if you start something, then people start wanting it. And if you don't have this ready, then you have to get that ready, and then somebody else wants that. And I'm sure the background that Brandon, especially, well, Claire and Julie and Tanya are working on is that quite a bit of that. But there's that feeling of, oh my gosh, the rush, the pressure, the hours. And so if you could speak a bit to that, that would be good.
I could just sort of say, I think what I tried to do was to reduce how much time we were speaking for. And so obviously those are things that are critical that I cut out, that you're speaking to in terms of talking about whole landscapes, like the coherence of the storytelling, because really it is a paradigm shift we're talking about. So maybe something about that needs to go back into the sort of, I think that context setting is important, and we can probably keep getting better at trying to do that. So that's one of the things that got left out. So thanks for bringing it up, because you kind of get blind to what's in there. And I think you're absolutely right about with this much complexity, there are people wanting stuff or needing stuff, and it's just one thing here, but actually it creates a cascade of stuff over here. And so I think the website functioning at a it needed to be at a functional state, and we're just getting there. And I must say, Brandon has done like a huge amount of work on that. And then the other thing I think is that there are some really important opportunities that we were just like, Regenerate Cascadia has kind of hit a moment, and I think that we're doing stuff that just hadn't been done before, which was connecting the people working on the ground and insisting that it needed to be about the relationships at the heart of it, and that it's the people that then have relationships or are trusted in their landscapes to be able to know and connect with the people that are doing the work, yeah, so what was the saying up there? Anyway, yeah, no, so it created this sort of this ability to connect with the people doing the work that nobody knew how to reach, because at an when you focus on supporting organizations, it's less about the relationship and more about the organizational structure. And even if the organizations are doing amazing work, it's just, anyway, it was, and I think, we're just at a place in the world right now where, you know, many of the paths that we're going down that people have put a lot of investment and energy into are, anyway, this feels like a viable and regenerative way of working, and I think people have seen that. And so it's really just trying to make sure that we become viable because of the basic infrastructure that's in place. And I think that's, we're still going to need to keep working on that. Yeah, Brandon,
That's great. Something I'd be curious of, Jan, is you've been really a part of this process for, I feel like, a long time, and then also now are kind of, you know, having a core insight. How well do you feel like you understand what Regenerate Cascadia is? Would you be able to summarize it to a friend in a pair, like, you know, in a few sentences? Or do you feel like you're still learning or have more understanding to go? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, great question. I think that I think that there's the two streams I could talk. One is the vision of the work, what regeneration is about, what bioregionalism is about, what the specific Regenerate Cascadia is about, and then so you know, give examples of what regeneration might look like at the local level and some of the challenges that people are running into, and then go into the administrative aspect of a 301, and hopefully Canada will have one too, a funding organization that then can provide some of the administrative support, as well as supporting the capacity building on many levels. So I think there's both of those two. Like, one is, you know, what does it mean in terms of what does it look like? Why would I want to be involved? And I can kind of do that. And then, you know, fleshing out more and more of the detail now about what it means to have the structure where not every group and every community has to reinvent their own nonprofit organization, blah, 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 because there's this. And I think this of how the support from there being an administrative funding aspect, I'm learning more of the language about what that might mean and how that can then be translated down to the specific community.
And so, sorry, I'm going to jump around a little bit. Mike with the Cascadia Seed Guild in Eugene. Do you feel like you have a good understanding of what a guild is? Right? Like, this is something that we're building together. We're just starting to create it. Do you feel comfortable and knowledgeable about what a guild is in the structure of how we're building it with Regenerate Cascadia?
I mean, I think so. You know, that sounds unsure, but I don't mean it that way. I mean,
no, well, and you can be unsure like, too.
Yeah, but well, let me say what I think it is then. I believe that it's you know, I can put it into a really sort of short phrase. My sort of thought about it is, and this is from a pure food perspective, is that we need to get to a stage where any town, city, civilization, whatever you want to call it, within Cascadia and beyond, because I think we can help other people too, is able to exist from the food supplies locally, you know, and it depends where you are in the world. We happen to be in a fairly fertile part of the world, particularly the Willamette Valley, because of, you know, historic floods and so on. But I don't know whether I'm stating. So in other words, it's really simple to me. Let's not depend on food supplies that come from 1,500 miles away, which is the average distance at the moment. Let's eat what we can, from wherever we are locally. That's so the guild, in my opinion, is to support communities who want to do that via seed saving and growing of food. I don't know whether that's logical or not, but that's how I feel about it.
Great. And I'm kind of curious, so Joey and Anita, so this is your first time kind of being, and I think it's awesome that you guys kind of dropped into a bioregional education meeting or a bioregional learning meeting as your first exposure, because it's a wonderful group. But I'm kind of curious, after attending the meeting, like, do you feel like you had a pretty good understanding of like what Regenerate Cascadia is that we're building, or are there still some like gray spots in terms of like, oh, and also, where are you guys located?
So we're in Bothell area.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'm at the Songaya co-housing community in Bothell, and Joey is just a couple streets over.
And I want to just add one thing in before you do carry on, is just what would you be looking for? Like what would inspire you for where you're coming from?
Thanks, Claire. Well, Joey, I don't know, do you want to talk about like the threads that brought us here, or I don't know.
You speak beautifully to it as well. Do you want to just drop in and I'll fill in some gaps if there are any?
Man, I feel like this whole, I think I do have a grasp on what is, what's attempting to be created here. And really it's like a large scale system to connect people to one another, to connect people to resources, connect people to knowledge, and make sure that knowledge gets captured and passed, intergenerationally. And that also, I appreciate sort of like the funding aspect of it, trying to hook people up to resources that they might not otherwise have access to. And it feels like this is something that Joey and I like. This is the flavor of the stuff that we've been talking about for years, right? Like connecting, creating bioregional culture that's centered on stewardship of the land and regeneration or generation of like a culture that we actually want to live in. And everything that goes with that, all the aspects of culture building that goes with that. And something that we recently have been talking about, which is so crazy that it's sort of the word guild is what kind of sucked us into these particular meetings today, because we've been talking about a guild for like lost skills or skills that are at risk of being lost. Things that making things with our hands, and we now both have slingshots and
because
like
we don't have enough land to do archery.
Archery, leatherworking, like I am already like I've been working as a gardener, and my formal schooling is in ecological restoration, the skills of food preservation and things like that, like these sorts of skills that we know that we're going to need for the times to come. Like we know that we need to nourish communities of people learning these sorts of hands-on skills, and we've been calling it just like guild, so that sort of like was what sort of sucked us into this, and it feels like it's right in line with all of the sort of things that you all are talking about. Joy, would you add anything?
Beautifully spoken. And the most beautiful future I can imagine in Cascadia, always for me, what was so alive was this bioregional, cultural, ancestral, ecological center that people can come and learn from and take back to wherever they were. And like I always imagined it like in like a specific place, like Whatcom County or something. I don't know, somewhere where there's like land people can put into a trust that's like sort of still there and workable. I don't know. I have a lot of assumptions built up into what that means, right? And presuppositions. But what this is so in line with that, it isn't necessarily, in a way, it's more of the web that can connect the whole region. Because if a center was physical, right, even that physicality limits people from getting there and getting to it. But the human side of the cultural aspects that are being lost on the human side of things, how to sing together, right, how to resolve conflict together, these things are just as important as the ecological, and they're not separate, at all. So I think I am understanding what's happening. I'm just getting used to the lingo that you're using. Um, I I think that I'm a teacher at a Montessori school. I'm creating this Earth education program, but really a lot of it has to do with storytelling and ceremony, honestly. Um, no one on this call is unaware of how heartbroken we are, but kids as young as third grade are very aware of it too. And so the narratives that they are getting from culture, from their parents, from the news are very apocalyptic, very, it's like, I was learning about solar punk. There's an image you guys used on one of the pages of your website. So I was like reading about solar punk today, which I think is amazing. It's like because of doom narratives are so popular, it's actually that's not punk anymore. So solar punk is actually like no, like hopeful futures, regenerative futures, which I kind of dig. I think it's so funny. Oh my God. So anyway,
That's
a lot of
awesome.
it's storytelling, right? It's like people need to see what humans are capable of in this completely ancestral and also very new way. So yeah, I love what's happening here. Really appreciate it and everyone who's here.
I feel like I feel like people read the like in the 80s and 90s, like they read all the best like cyberpunk, like sci-fi, but then they took all the wrong lessons. But no, that's really wonderful. And I just want to also speak to your so this idea of like bioregional learning centers is really, really powerful. And I think part of what we're exploring is trying to figure out what that term means. And it is, right? Like I think part of this is creating a culture and the ceremony. And part of that is language and ritual and also like how we come and how we treat each other, treating each other with respect, compassion, creating space for us to fail. I think that that's really important. Our culture is all about succeeding and immediate and success. So shifting this also into a generational framework, and that actually it's a lifelong goal and lessons. And we got to create space where we're just going to fail over and over again, but we can pick each other up and learn. And as long as we have the feedback loops where we're learning, then we can do better the next time. And with the bioregional learning centers, that's not to say that there also might not be well, one, like this idea is really interesting of a bioregional learning center that can help be kind of rooted to a landscape and at the scale of a landscape. But then also there might be several different bioregional learning sites which help get the people's like actual physical location and hands dirty and actually help share the knowledge and the learning. And I think that's where there's just so many people doing amazing things with specific sites. So
I would love to just pick up also on something that you brought up earlier in the education meeting, but you referenced it again, was just we haven't spoken enough about the arts, the role of and community art, especially singing together is what you were talking about, but community art, like art in service of the community, in understanding who you are and embodied ways of knowing, which often get short shift in the way that we, so cerebral and all of the, setting your targets and your plans and I mean, even what we're doing right now, it gets lost in that. And there's a lot of conversation about that, but I just wanted to recognize what you had brought up, Joey, and you, Anita, just to say that's really, really important. I think we've just been scrambling so hard on the structural stuff that some of that maybe is being less brought to the fore, but a lot of people have really picked up on that as well, is that the role of the arts and the sort of slowing down and the how do you make sure that the invisible is made visible so that it doesn't get left off. And it's very easy when it's not verbal.
I'll also add, if you're talking about throwing a better party, Yeah, we have so many people in Seattle, and we've just been so busy that we haven't been able to get anything started. But Cameron's in Seattle, Mike, who was on the call earlier, is in Seattle. There's just like there was so much energy. There's always like, Seattle's like kind of a hub and a heart. But if you so that could be an easy in if you all are interested in maybe hosting a potluck or finding a place for a bonfire to happen once a month, or finding some places where that singing and dance and music can happen. I'll just throw that out there, and then over to Mike, and then Cameron. I would love to get your input too, since this is the first info session that you've seen. But over to you, Mike. You have your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick one. I mean, I shared something in the chat, which I think is it's interesting to look at. I mean, I'm sort of repeating myself again. Seeds are so critical and so important, and so often not thought about. And that's based on what I shared there is based on personal experience, and it could to the bottom line, you could say we can produce immense amounts of food out of small areas in towns and cities. There's one of the organizations that inspired me, and I know a lot of you heard me say this before, is out of northern England, a small town that fell on hard times and pulled itself up. And they have this incredible phrase, and like I said, I know a lot of you have heard it before, but it's very simple. It is this. I'll say it slow. If you eat, you're in. We're all in this. Food. If we don't have food, we pass on to a different realm. So food is a critical, part of all of what we're doing. I'll keep quiet.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. And I love that. If you eat, you're in. So I'd love, Cameron, if it's okay, maybe just to jump over to you, get your input. And then also, I'd also love to hear from Julie and Tanya, who are really familiar with what we're doing. And do you feel comfortable enough with Regenerate Cascadia to repeat it and educate new people and help guide them and onboard and orient people? Or are things still gray for you? But yeah, Cameron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, really exciting presentation. I loved the scaling subject matter you were talking about. I got really excited about, connecting groups that are doing the same things, that can share insight, that can learn from each other, that can help each other sort of find what works and what doesn't. And that's like incredibly exciting. That will connect us all down the road, knowing that you're not in this alone. Other people are doing the same thing, having the same challenges, and working towards similar solutions, some of which may or may not apply to your sort of microcosm. But being connected, communicating can only help us, give us that insight. Here's what worked for them. Maybe we can use some aspects of it and on our project, on our land, but we have more, rocky terrain or something, and you have to do something differently as well. And then other people will benefit from your experience doing that. So the more we're connected we are, both digitally and physically in person, the greater we can, help each other effectively carry out projects, garner volunteers from the local community, as well as gain funding and network. So that was like super, super exciting. I think that came across really well. And yeah, just connecting people with, aspect of it is what's gonna, sit true. That you connect with these people's movement and their goals, and that will make you, want to help out any way you can. you know, whether it's something small or large, like a small garden plot that you can get going in the next month, or something way bigger that's going to be years in the making. Yeah. So thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me. It's incredibly insightful.
It's really wonderful. Tanya or Julie, would either of you kind of like to jump in? How is this sitting for you? And like, do you feel like you have a firm grasp enough that you could onboard and steward someone else for Regenerate Cascadia, how to be involved, what the different like structure levels are? How's it sitting with you?
Yeah, I do think I have enough of a sense. The questions that were coming up for me in preparing for tomorrow were more like on logistical things and more of like back end little things that weren't so much about the structure necessarily. But I think for me, it's more about practice and actually doing it rather than like, yes, I do think I get it, and I do think the practice of it is going to be going to be important. And I do think it might be important to keep looking into and refining, like not refining, simplifying as much as we can, because it is a lot, and it's I think as a new person coming in, it's probably quite overwhelming, I can imagine. And yeah, so I keep thinking about how do we simplify, but in given what we're trying to do, I mean, it is very complex. So yeah, how? But yeah, thank you for asking, Brian.
Um, yes, I believe I can communicate what we're trying to do here, and only because it's what I've dreamt of happening all my life. So it's great to be involved with a group of people that really are building relationships. You know, there's groups like I know Anita. She just showed up today. Um, we've met through different circles, the Good Enough community, and uh, um, the Northwest Permaculture Convergence. And I'm seeing all kinds of people connected in different ways throughout the Cascadia area. And it's very exciting to me that we're actually doing this. We're actually making the dream happen to build community, to connect the basically islands of heaven on earth. We're creating together, and that's something I've always wanted to do, is network. I remember hearing the word network when I was a kid and just like lighting up. It's like, what? What's that? And yeah, building community and a culture around what we really care about, and about common values of concern and compassion, and being connected to all of our relatives, not just the human ones, but even the human ones. I'm actually excited that we talk about conflict resolution and things like that. We're talking about what really needs to happen, how we really need to change in our relationships to ourselves and all the life around us that we're related to. So I would say yes. um, does that sound like the dream that we're doing here to you, Brandon and Claire?
I love it, Julie. It's really great. You know, one thing that comes up for me is just I would see people who had so much potential, and then you'd speak to someone else and it's like the need for that potential was needed there. And the thing that I would just love was being able to actually connect and bring those together. So I just feel like that is what's happening here. And you can see this like incredible potential of creating the systems to bring that together. But it just, we all want to feel a sense of actually being in service of it. Like I really think we're hungry for being in service of this beautiful world that we want, and it just felt like everything that existed kind of curtailed that. There were these barriers that kind of just sort of sapped the potential, not always completely, but just whereas you know, seeing someone like Paul this morning, and just his capacity and what he was able to bring, but then it unlocks what Claire was bringing, and Jan, who's got this amazing material. I mean, God, Jan is just, if you had to know, just what an incredible bioregional background she has, and what she's written for decades, and been trying to do, and then to know that we've got people like that, but just tons of people that are there wanting to be of service, and we're needing that, you know, that's a very powerful combination. So I mean, I'm loving hearing what you're saying, but it's not that complicated. I just have no idea why we got as complicated as we did to not allow the human potential to be realized in service of the right relationship with the land. I mean, the land is kind of the thing. What Jan was saying is that was one of the most powerful organizing pieces, that every time, so in the Greater Victoria area, when we would meet with people, when we brought in the coherence of the land, and that the land is what organizes the people, as opposed to us deciding where we're going to draw the lines and map it out, it becomes this, because who are we to argue with nature and how nature works when we do that? But when we work with it, that when we, you know, and a lot of people do understand that when we talk about it, it then becomes this really powerful organizing principle. So
I think it's really amazing, and I'm seeing a lot of like really cool things kind of blipping up on the sidebar too. And actually, like within that, I'd actually love to just take a pause and invite everybody that every week, Jan and Pamela and a few others lead a Cascadia campfire, where it's kind of an unstructured space. I think it's 10 o'clock. Is that right, Jan?
Yeah, 10 o'clock on Fridays, and it's basically a time for just sharing and sense making and not needing to have an agenda. And
Are we losing you, Jan?
yeah.
Okay, sorry, Jan.
But what if that could happen in real life? We're
whoa, you're getting ahead of us now. That's phase 2 is actually meeting in person and not virtually. And I think what's really nice is yeah, it's an interesting interplay when you have the scale of Cascadia, because there's a lot of people where, like, especially when you start to go inland and other places, but you know, where it can be very difficult to meet in person. And so this provides a really nice place to come and sense make together as a movement. But it's called a campfire for a reason. The point is to recreate the experience of sitting around a campfire with people and really around yarning. And so our hope is actually to create these campfires in every different area. And Whidbey Island, for example, is talking about like full moon bonfires again. Like they used to do full moon nights. And like, you know, stuff like that is just awesome. So that's yeah.
And Jan, you were frozen. I don't know if you realized we missed the end of what you were saying.
yeah, my internet thing going in and out all day. So thank you for finishing off there, Brandon, because I kind of was into it and then it got kicked right out. So yeah, the space is there, and anybody's welcome to come.
You know, something I'd just love to highlight here, it'll be up on the website. Julie, I don't know, I haven't checked the website right now, but there is a bi-regional Earth Summit happening in February. It's up. Oh, thank you so much. That our counterparts in the Greater Toronto bioregions, the Great Lakes area, they're hosting. So Joe Brewer, who was part of the activation tour, is a key part of putting that summit together, and it sounds pretty amazing. We were just hearing about it. I can't remember, this morning. Was it this morning? No. Was it this morning? Oh my God!
It was hard to believe. It's been a long day.
Yeah, we're going to be participating in that conference. We'll be sharing some of what's happening in Regenerate Cascadia, but really it is to just show that this is tied into this this global bioregional movement, and that we're able to do what we're doing because we're learning from each other. And you know, we got to the place of being able to understand what was possible through the work of, you know, anyway. But yeah, connecting it is really important. So, Jan.
Well, I think so many of us just appreciate Claire and Brandon so much for what you've done, what you've brought together, your vision, a huge amount of work. But I'm just wondering, is there something that you all want to say about how we can help you? What do you need?
Oh, you're asking the real questions. Claire, do you have any thoughts?
You know, I think the basic structure needed to be there, and we've scrambled to kind of, and I think a bunch of it is coming. And I think people's patience, people have been incredibly patient with the things that haven't worked quite right and have actually stepped in to do stuff. I think that you know, really, I think that we need to increase the capacity on the ground. We've been sort of thinking about what are the first pieces that need to really come onto the ground to increase that capacity. And really, I've never, in all the community development work I've ever done, there needs to be somebody who can help hold those relationships. And that needs to be held. It can't just be like the volunteer piece is really, I think a lot of this, like if it's really important work, why are we not paying people or providing the resources to support them to do that really, like this is the most critical work that we should be doing. Jay Bowen at in Skagit said, you are the most important people on earth that are here right now. And it's true. It's like we are the ones who are caring and need to value what we're doing. And part of that is making sure that the people who are doing that are resourced enough to be able to do that work. Most of the work that I've done, like over the last 30 years, like I've either not been paid or not been paid a living wage to do that work. I found funding in other places, but for this work, it hasn't been funded. And that needs to change. But we're not the only ones who are saying that. Actually, the people with money too also know that. They just have no idea how to find the people doing this work. And so this is kind of creating a delivery system to the people who are doing that work. But anyway, I think that once we are able to hold that basic capacity, and that's what the scramble is to kind of make sure that those pieces, because once those are being held, it's kind of like, okay, then we can kind of, I mean, like I'd love to slow down a little bit once that's there, but that until those capacities are being held, it's really hard not to just keep going as much as we can to get that happening. And also that the website is, we've very deliberately chosen to use a structure that is being co-created. So it may need to have coders and website design who can kind of really make it go faster and do all of the things that go on behind the scenes. But there was nothing out there, as Brandon was saying, there was nothing out there that we could just come in and put in place. We needed to build what was needed. And so, you know, but all of that, like if the infrastructure is there, we can then know that we can start making it better in all the ways that we need to make it better, but we need to have the basics there. Yeah, I don't know, Brandon, and I know we're at time, but I'd love to hear
Sure.
from you.
Yeah, no, I'll be brief, but I've just really appreciated people's patience and being willing to work through this and work through the headaches. I mean, and real headaches, right? Like, I mean, the fact that we have a website, it's slow, it's clunky. There's like, there's HTML all over the place and this, that, but it works. And I mean, for the people who like have been through us of like things changing all the time and broken links and all the rest of it, it's been really very appreciated. And I really appreciate people like coming in and like I love these like really emergent processes. And the reason why like I think it's important that we actually like I love this check-in where it's like, how are we doing? How much do you understand? Because our next step, like I mean, we have done almost no communication with like the broad-based 1,000+ people that we've touched, right? Or the thousands of people who wanted to get involved before then and or like leaned in and so a lot of this is that right now it's like it's kind of like work slow, work right, and or work small, work right. I don't know, but really what I've appreciated is that we've had this small group of like 30 or 40 people that's helping us prototype and test. It's been amazing to work with, like where we can work with people like Mike and Paul Chiragino and Claire Strawn and Quinn and who are holding the bioregional education. And then we can actually be like, all right, how is this website working? What is functioning? I mean, I know that there's like no mobile and we haven't developed the app yet or whatever, but those can be phases. And the cool thing is it's like a minimum viable product or whatever, and just getting something working. And our next step, so what's cool is like, so this is the part where now we're like, okay, we've kind of got the website working. Now we're starting to get the structure of like the actual organization and what we're doing and how we want that to look. And we get to co-create that with everybody here. And then our next step will be to actually start to open it up. It's like, and to invite people into the guilds. And the bioregional learning, group is such a great example because they're going to have this unconference. And that was like Quinn's idea, right? He's like, we need to have an unconference to start the guild where it's already got so many great work groups and it's got archiving and the bioregional education asset mapping and actual physical sites and all the rest of it. And then they're going to have this unconference and we can actually send that to the email list and invite people into that. And what a great model. And then Mike just had this Cascadia Seed Guild meeting. And that's where I like kind of stop and go, oh, this is really amazing. Because that was like what, Saturday. And there's only been a few people in the group that are like, and they're kind of like populating. But every time Mike has one of these calls, there's like 30 people on the call, and they're like the heads of like, sailors. You got the Sailor Sea Seed Guilds and the heads of transitions in the islands and national like seed networks. I mean, really amazing people, and they're leaning in on this and going like we need to get these like networks up. We got to get our own spaces up. We want to do classes. Where are we sharing? How are we empowering? Come present over here. And I'm just kind of like blown away. And I'm like, right, okay. So it is actually really important that we slow down a little bit, make sure that we have that structure in place, have the terms, have our structure, because when we're ready, I think like there's so many people hungry for this, and it's up to us to really do a good job so that we can actually come in service to people. And I really love that. And what I'm excited by is that we're really close to being able to actually do that. Where like our goal gets to be like, hey, you're doing really important work. Like, let's just make it happen. And so I just appreciate like the co-creation, the willingness, and also like just the authentic, like we've been able to do this, and like we have not had any like bad actors or negative people. Like people's energy is incredible. The stuff that people is doing is incredible. And I think that's the regenerative work. I think like it's so positive. It's so like it's not reactive. It's not it's like really about creating healthy cultures, healthy systems. And so yeah, I don't know. That's all. That's yeah, a little ramble, but yeah, so a little patience and other stuff, but I mean it's really amazing.
I hear the patience and appreciation and trust and let's just keep working together. And like you guys are just stunning. I mean, it's amazing. So I'm just hoping that it doesn't drain you too much, and that you're getting the support you need in all the different ways.
Thank you. Thanks for asking the question.
And I will just say, like, just on personal levels, I think, like, I think we will have to find, and this is actually something that we talk a lot about with like Julie and Tanya and Claire and I behind the scenes, is how are we kind of balancing and taking care? Because Claire actually, I think, has a lot of personal stuff around like family commitments and being with family, and that's really important and important priorities. And then I'm kind of trying to like align. I've got a lot of like lingering issues where because I kind of like dropped a lot of stuff and just like pivoted to like all Regenerate Cascadia all the time about like 8 months ago, and it's kind of catching up with me. So like I'm like, okay, I need to like figure out some other strings, and I'm currently doing that. And then once it's done, but so that's something that we're balancing. And and just yeah, and with that, like you know, honestly, I really appreciate people taking the time to like try to use the website, and then it's really important actually like let us know where it's broken, where it's frustrating, and where it doesn't work, because that's going to be the part that makes it usable for other people, right? Like that's not just going to be one person. It's so important to know. And just if you're not familiar, I'll take this as a moment to just pop over here. And if you're not familiar with the website, this is kind of what we're building. We had a meeting with Regenerate Whatcom on Tuesday, and like some of them hadn't even been to the website before, and so that was a good like lesson of like, oh, okay. But when you create an account, you can sign up, but you'll be able to have like messages. We are trying to build like a network of regenerative communities and projects, and you can get your notifications. You got all your little updates where you can see your connections. But a really important part of the website is we do have a calendar. It's up in this top menu under events, and you can see what's coming up. And you can see, oh, there's a onboarding information session. Oh, we actually, oh yeah, like the campfires Friday. Tanya is going to be doing another steward onboarding tomorrow, and this is her first kind of attempt to help onboard people through the technical processes of what we're building. But anyways, you can see the campfire, and just also, oh, that's probably big on my screen. Sorry. But all to say that on the left-hand side, you have kind of like a menu bar. All of our Zoom links use the same Zoom. So it's just right here. It's just a Zoom link. It's the same Zoom every time. And we do that just to make it really easy for people to find. But you can also see a link to the Telegram group. We're very active. We are trying to shift off of Telegram. That's where we did a lot of our organizing, and it's where we're still doing a lot of our organizing until we get the website up and working. So that's a great place. You can ping us anywhere. You can see our Google Drive. You can see a directory of the members and connect with people. And then the other thing that you can do is you can see groups. And so that's like a really important thing as well. Is that if you're looking and you sign in for the first time and you're like, oh man, I don't get where are all the things? Well, we have communities and topics. Topics will be things like bioregional education, arts and culture, bioregional mapping, pro-social. And then we have communities, and it's like, go find yourself, the Pacific Coast, the Salish Sea. You'll see like, oh, I'm in, where am I? Oh, I'm in Seattle. And you can click there and you'll see a really inactive group, but feel free to join it. And then we can bump people up as stewards. You can become a moderator. It doesn't really matter yet. It's early and stuff. But you can also see like a different spaces like that. And then there's a start here. So you got your news feed. We have welcome areas where we have like how-tos, coffee house conversations. But also we have a tech support area and a website ideas and feedback. And this is always in process. But a big part of this too is that you have organizer tools. So this is where someone can share an announcement. They can share an event on the calendar. And like a report back and stuff. So here, and then you can also see like part of what happens when you have a group is that you get either like an online group or a page. So if you're like, oh, I want to learn more about this bioregional education group, you can always click on the bioregional education page. This has a link to the community. It should have their updates and other things where you can see, oh yeah, here's what's been happening with the guild. Here's their upcoming events where you can see it if you need to. And then you can always go to the community topic and then, click on bioregional education. And this would actually take you to the online group where you could connect with some of those people. So if you went to the meeting and you're like, oh, I'm kind of interested, you can see like Claire's like uploading her documents about the asset mapping. You know, other people are joining the group and blah, 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 blah. So there are like forum threads and subgroups, and that's a little bit of kind of like what we're trying to build on the back end. And then with the tools built in that anybody might need to I don't know, take next steps.
So Brandon, I am noticing that it's 10 past, and I'm sure it's, yeah. But thank you. I think that's helpful for anyone that hasn't been to the website. Yeah, with that, thank you very much, everyone, for hanging out in your evening.
Yeah, as always.
Yeah. So
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this. We look forward to continuing to plug in. Great seeing you all and meeting you all.
Ah,
great to have you.
absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
Have lovely evenings, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
So.